we're going to go on and move into Q&A. There's some great stuff coming in here. And I'm going to start with some questions around specifically people entering the workforce and those entry-level jobs. So, Holly, I think this one is really good for you. You know, people that were getting out of college and starting work the last 5 years, they've had it rough. They had COVID. Not all of them have had the surroundings of an office. Some of them think that's good, some of them not so much. You know, this panel is not about remote work versus work in the office. But given all of these whammies they've had to go through, how do we train and assimilate and invest in these workers that are entering now?
Mm-hmm. This is a tricky question because I subscribe to the mentality that you're not going to keep them that long. So again, go back to the data. The data says you're going to keep them potentially 1.5 years.
Wow.
They're coming into your world for 1.5 years. Maybe you get them for 2. Maybe if you're really lucky, you get them for 3. If you have a big enough system that allows them to move around and learn. So what do you know about them? You know that they're a little beaten down. So this resiliency factor becomes important. Like what condition are they arriving in? Are they arriving full on, or are they arriving partially on, or are they completely depleted? So being really mindful in your hiring process about that. Make sure who comes into your container, can withstand your container. The second is, do you have the structure to support their needs? They like a lot of feedback. Tends to be they like most humans, they like good feedback. So how skilled are your leaders at delivering the stuff that doesn't feel so great? Mm-hmm. And if they aren't very skilled, make sure you've got some mechanisms for them to learn how to deliver feedback that's both positive and maybe not so positive. How are your communication mechanisms within your company? Do you have practices that allow them to frequently give you feedback? And then what do you do with that feedback? Do you communicate to them? Those are just some really practical, tangible mm-hmm. things. But I would start from the perspective of how long do you actually, and this is a conversation I don't think is happening very often. How long do we expect to keep them? And mm-hmm. what's our plan for when they leave? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a plan for when they leave, you just sort of start the flywheel all over again.
Okay. Yeah, good points. Especially that about how their management is trained. Because oftentimes their managers, their first line managers, they're probably not maybe that old themselves. They probably haven't been in the workforce maybe that long.
And in my experience, it's the first time they're managing people. And definitely. In many cases without a lot of support or training.
Good points. Yeah. So you mentioned something that ties into our next question. And Shubi, I think this is a really good one for you. And I'll go on and give an illustration. We're wrestling with this in cybersecurity right now. Always, right now, one of the best entry positions in cybersecurity is to have people come join as a security operations analyst. That pretty much means read a bunch of log files, look at a bunch of events, figure out if anything bad happened. It's a great entry-level job. It's a terrific way to get in, get started, and then move to harder, bigger, and better things that eventually bring you to a chair with ice water on a very cold day at a golf club in Lakewood. It's great. That job is perfect for AI. In fact, AI is going to be so much better at that job.
Datadog does that.
Exactly, because it's multiprocessor thinking is what that job is. AI is perfect for it. So, Shubi, however, we can't stop there. At some point, the next level analyst who does need to bring that human level in, they're going to retire one day. And what do we do if we don't have anyone who's in that pipeline, right? So, Shubi, how do we think about that balance of still growing a pipeline, but still getting utilization from AI where we can?
Yeah. This is what I was saying earlier. I think the shape of the organization and the skill sets we need. So as Holly said, we need problem solving. But problem solving, I think today in the world of AI is very different than when I started. So back in the days when I was at Ford, junior role was pricing analyst. And how did we do pricing at Ford? Hundreds of spreadsheets, right? And if something went wrong though, and if my ears were pulled, at least I knew that I could go back to my spreadsheets and figure out where I made the mistake. But today, how would you do pricing? Machine learning, right? You have all this data and the algorithms are going to figure it out and then you're going to get in. But But if you got the pricing wrong, it's a black box. So how do you figure that out? And I think problem solving today is going to be those analysts who really understand all the assumptions that went into the algorithm and how was the pricing data structured, what was weighted more versus not, what kind of algorithms were used for predictive analytics of the pricing. It's a very different problem-solving approach we would take today for those folks, rather than what, let's say, I did 25 years ago, right?
Okay.
And so that skill set as they grow. So imagine now this analyst becomes a leader. This person or manager, now this person knows exactly how that technology is working, which back in the day, we didn't have to worry about it other than
So you still have entry-level jobs, but they're different.
they're different.
It's not the same as what we've had.
Correct, because you're using different tools.
And we are going to have to go through, there's no easy button for this one.
Nope.
We have to figure out what now means
Yes.
entry-level job.
That's right.
I would
And
add
you
one thing
need
to
the
that.
senior leader who has a judgment to be able to look at the output and say, oh, that doesn't look right.
Right. The whole human AI combo.
That
being-
human, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where the judgment from us comes in.
Yeah.
Ah.
We've got 4 minutes left, and there's 2 areas I really want to touch on. So let's see if we can do this real quick. There's 2 questions that came in, and they're really similar that I'm going to take a very fast answer to. And one is, what are some practical guardrails so that AI can be used, but in a safe way, that the board can and should be aware of? And I think very much related to this, we've got especially younger people coming into the workforce that are used to certain behaviors and activities online that probably are not safe, from a cybersecurity standpoint. How do we deal with that? I think the answer to both of these is very similar. It is amazing how much progress there's been in tools now that are transparent to the user. There's now the concept of an enterprise browser. And if you think about what is an enterprise browser, go look it up. It's I think in 5 years, every company is going to be using this. What it means is, you think about you're at home, you open Chrome, you do stuff on Chrome, you store your passwords, you do whatever. You go to work, you open Chrome, you store your passwords, you do your email, whatever. This is one of the last remaining areas where work and home are so intertwined. And that's incredibly unsafe, by the way. This is how most passwords get harvested now, by things called info stealers. So the rise of the enterprise browser means when you're at work, you're using a different browser. Not just a different instance of Chrome, but you're using something called Island or something called Chromium. And it is possible to, let's say someone opens up Chrome and they try to log into Workday. Your version of Workday won't let them. It only lets them log into Workday if they're using Island, for example. So these are the ways that we can actually redirect and change employee behavior by giving them the right tools that let them do their job. That's the key part. If you stop people from doing their job, they're going to find a way around it. The answer is not no. The answer is how to get to yes, right? And so I think both in terms of AI guardrails, where again, an enterprise browser is great here. You can use an enterprise browser that does not allow ChatGPT access, but does allow access to your own enterprise version of Copilot.
Yep.
Great, safe way to use AI. So I highly recommend transparent tools that still allow the employee to do their job. And the last thing I'm going to wrap with, and this is probably going to have to be a very fast answer, but it's a great question. The different generations and different demographics have a different idea of what ethical use of data is specifically. How do we deal with that? And how should we approach that dichotomy and polarity? It's a good one for you.
Yeah. So I would say the more senior leadership is more focused on impact it will have on reputation, impact it will have on the bottom line, right? That I think is more like that's when you think about the framework. I think the more junior population is also very focused on the individual. Is it fair to the person? It's really important. Is it fair to the person? So both are equally ethical, but just on a different spectrum.
Yep. So again, listening and
Stating your position as a company.
Great
Stating
point.
your position as a company. Here's our values. and here's what we think. Bye.
Yep. Yep. And that, so yes, great takeaway. Understand what your company's definition is, understanding that there can be so many definitions. I mean, we think about, ethical and moral frameworks differ so much by culture. It's the same thing. They differ by demographic in terms of how data is handled.